Hey, my friends and fellow moral Americans, and welcome to another episode of Facts Me. I am your host, Stephen Lancaster, and for this episode, I'm covering a top 10 list. But not just any top 10 list. I'm going to go over the top 10 things the Democrats don't want you to know. Particularly, the top 10 things they don't want you to know about their party. A party that, sadly, many of you represent. I think some of you represent them not knowing the full truth about your own party. This is where I come in. Here at Facts Me, we educate, not fabricate. These top 10 facts the Democrats keep from you will stretch across history up to modern day. And number 10 will hopefully open your eyes enough to see that you are getting down with the wrong party. To kick things off, let's start with number 1 and the assassination of President Abraham Lincoln. In 1865, John Wilkes Booth, a pro-slavery advocate who aligned with the Democrats, shot and killed President Abraham Lincoln in the back of the head. That's right, the Democrats were pro-slavery. But why did he assassinate Abraham Lincoln, the former president on the United States penny? The same president who sits and towers in front of the Lincoln Memorial in Washington, D.C. President Lincoln wanted to abolish slavery and extend rights to black people. This went against the Democrat narrative of keeping them as slaves. Number 2, we have all sadly heard of the Ku Klux Klan, better known as the KKK. After the assassination of President Abraham Lincoln, Republicans stood their ground and continued to push to abolish slavery and give black people rights through a new period called Reconstruction. Republicans freed 4 million formerly enslaved people and stood to protect their rights. This upset the Democrats, so they formed the KKK, a violent secret organization that used terror, intimidation, and murder to oppose Reconstruction and maintain white supremacy. The Klan's main goal was to restore white dominance after slavery was abolished and to suppress black Americans' newfound rights. Number 3, Jim Crow laws were formed by Democrats after the KKK failed to stop Republicans from giving black Americans rights. Jim Crow laws were laws that legally separated black and white people in almost every area of public life. Separate schools for black children, segregated public transportation, restrooms, restaurants, drinking fountains, bans on interracial marriage, and so much more to keep black Americans away from white people. This led to thousands of black Americans being murdered by lynching and racial violence. Democrat-led Jim Crow laws extended for nearly 100 years until finally the civil rights movement hit, and by the 1960s, they were removed. Number 4, after losing the Civil War, Democrats started focusing on gun control in the hopes of removing the ability for any American who opposed them to stand up against them. They were trying to prevent another civil war and remain in control. The Democrat-led gun laws focused on disarming black Americans and poor whites. Black Americans could not own a firearm. The intent was to maintain racial and political control, not public safety. Hey, my friends, please join me on Facebook at facebook.com/CanYouFaxMe. To continue these discussions, gain access to powerful memes, and leave your thoughts and comments. That is facebook.com/CanYouFaxMe. And that's facts, spelled F-A-C-T-S. See you there. Number 5, women's rights. The Republican Party platform of 1872 was the first to support women's rights. The 19th Amendment, granting women the right to vote, was passed by a Republican-controlled Congress in 1919. The Republican Party was the leading force in making women's rights a reality. Democrats opposed it, largely because they feared it would expand the voting base beyond their control, just like they thought about Black Americans. Number 6 brings us to the big C word that we still see today within the Democrat Party: corruption. In the late 1800s and early 1900s, Democrats became symbols of corruption, bribery, and voter manipulation. They traded favors for votes and often exploited immigrant and working class communities. That certainly sounds like history has repeated itself, starting with Barack Obama all the way through Joe Biden. Number 7. President Bill Clinton and his fellow Democrats enacted the Violent Crime Control and Law Enforcement Act of 1994. The law contributed to a sharp rise in incarceration, particularly in minority communities of Black and Latino Americans. It disproportionately affected Black and Latino men because of systematic biases in policing and sentencing. Harsher sentences for nonviolent offenses helped fuel the mass incarceration crisis in the U.S., which continues today, even over 30 years later. What we would consider a misdemeanor today would put a Black or Latino man in prison for decades. Number 8. Democrats are the death dealers. It is such a mainstream misconception that Republicans, the party always standing behind Americans and their rights to defend themselves, are responsible for so much unnecessary death in our country and even the world. But the truth is, Democrats have been connected to events and policies that caused massive deaths. Like I mentioned with the Civil War, Jim Crow violence, and of course, the Vietnam War. Because of the Vietnam War, millions of Vietnamese were killed and over 58,000 American soldiers died. The war was pointless, and it wasn't ours to meddle with. It was more or less about a Democrat president wanting to control other nations to prevent them from communist rule. The U.S. had no traditional business in Vietnam. Once again, it was at the expense of others for the sake of control by the Democrat Party. Number 9, controlling their obsession with white supremacy. They subsidized agriculture so rich white farmers could remain successful, while small Black and Hispanic farmers would fail. They also created Social Security in 1935, and you guessed it, they excluded Black Americans, Hispanics, and women. Democrat President Lyndon B. Johnson created food stamps. This was yet another Democrat-led policy that forced Americans to depend on the government. But which Americans depended on it? By majority, it was the Black community, the Hispanic community, and women. So we're 9 facts in about Democrats, and have you realized the pattern yet? Democrats are all about control under the guise of helping you, when in reality, it's not to help you, it's to control you. Which leads to my number 10 and the final fact Democrats don't want you to know. But most importantly, if you have any inkling of critical thinking skills or the ability to see through, let's just say, bullshit, Democrats are nothing more than snake oil salesmen. They will say and do whatever they think you want to hear or see to get what they want without any real progress. And history has proven this. So let's hit it. Number 10. Number 10 embodies number 1 through number 9 and continues to demonstrate the ultimate goal of the Democrat Party: full control of the American people. Number 1 through 3 was their attempt at controlling Black people by refusing them rights, refusing them freedoms of any kind, and refusing to even view them as equals. They wanted them to remain slaves. Their slaves. Number 4, they started pushing to take away your rights to defend yourself or stand up to them if you disagreed. They wanted to be able to force their policies and their control on you. They wanted all of America to be slaves to their party. As you can see, still to this day, the Democrats want your right to defend yourself taken away. So then we throw in number 5, where Democrats never wanted women to have rights, just like blacks and just like Hispanics. They see this as a point they can't dominate you, so they take your side to control you, which slides into number 9, making you dependent on their finances through Medicaid, food stamps, and assistance. So of course you're going to vote for them. They're giving you money. They are literally buying your votes. Then we step back to number 6 and the corruption they hide behind supporting minorities. They just want the minority vote and nothing more. And when they can't get it, we get number 7, so they just put them in jail for petty crimes. Then number 8 and number 9, we mold together into one word: control. A sane mind cannot argue that the right, Republicans and conservatives, do more to give you freedom, control, and choice, because that's how it should be. They don't take away anything that gives you the right to survive. The left does. This isn't about which team is better, but the facts don't lie. We have to recognize history and the mistakes that were made. While I think both parties need a rebranding, the Democratic Party needs a leader first, one who can look at the past, acknowledge it, call it out for the atrocities they were, and bring the party forward. If you are a Democrat or liberal, you can choose to say none of this is true. You can choose not to believe it. You can continue to spread lies or turn the other cheek to reality. But in the end, your feelings and your opinions do not translate into or transform into facts. By denying yourself reality, you are choosing to live within your own delusion. And by doing so, you are hindering any progress, any real progress from your party. You can't be arrogant enough to believe you have seen any real progress from your party in, let's say, the past 20 or 30 years. You can't be overzealous enough to lie to yourself. Why would you do that? Now, I'm not saying Republicans are conservatives or even independents are without fault, because they aren't. But the big takeaway here is a word called accountability. The Democratic Party has crashed and burned. And as of this moment, you have no real leader stepping up to the plate. And especially a leader that just isn't repeating the same rhetoric as the very politicians who created the mess to begin with. It's all about a puppet regime to control you by making you think they are for you, when they're not. They just want to use you. I have personally juggled my political affiliation. I was pretty much a diehard Republican my entire life. But now at 48 years old, I'm conservative. I have switched to the Conservative Party. While I tend to agree more with the Republican side of issues, no party is perfect. But we first must recognize and acknowledge where parties went wrong in order to solve future issues. These facts are the history they keep from you, removed from our schools, and hidden from the media by controlling the media. They have been breeding a generation of followers. I'm going to say that again. They have been breeding a generation of followers. And we're succeeding. I urge you to listen to my episode, Gen Z Wasn't Taught, They Were Programmed. And maybe you will understand just a little bit more of what's actually been happening at your expense. In the meantime, my friends, my name is Stephen Lancaster, and you have been listening to Fax Me. Fax Me is available on Spotify, Facebook, Apple Music, YouTube. It's everywhere, man. Please join me on Facebook to continue these discussions at facebook.com/Can You Fax Me? Gosh, there's so much to remember. But in the meantime, my friends, Godspeed, stay loved and love. I wish peace be all with you, and I want nothing more than our society to be able to function safely, not worry about going outside and being stabbed or shot. Because what has happened is the Democrat Party and the extreme left have created this mess. They have bred their own assassins within our society. And they've done it through years and years of brainwashing. They've done it through our schools with our children. That's again why I urge you. To me, one of the best episodes I've done was the Gen Z wasn't taught, they were programmed. I spell it out for you as to why our school systems have changed. Because if you look back through history, Democrats have always been about control. All the way back to killing Abraham Lincoln, to the Jim Crow laws, to buying votes, everything I just read to you, those top 10 facts they don't want you to know. It's always been about control. And when they couldn't beat that one, they moved on to another angle. Well, we can't control the fact that the Republicans want black people to have rights and be free. So let's give them money so they'll feel like they owe us. Or, well, we can't be behind women voting because Republicans are protecting women's rights. So let's vote against women and their rights. And when that didn't work, they move on to the next thing, and they move on to the next thing. So their next thing was control the schools. Remove things from schools that are essential for our youth. Certain historical facts. Praying in school, the fear of God, the fear of repercussions. Teachers can't even correct a student anymore. I urge you to listen to that episode, because that is the point where the Democrats are at now in their big formulated control plan. Gen Z wasn't taught, they were programmed. And we are seeing the fruits of their labor right now because they have bred assassins that are within our community. It's scary stuff, my friends. Thank you again for listening. Have a great day. Have a great week. Keep supporting the good fight, and I will talk to you soon. Hey, my friends, please join me on Facebook at facebook.com/CanYouFaxMe to continue these discussions, gain access to powerful memes, and leave your thoughts and comments. That is facebook.com/CanYouFaxMe.